Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. If you are joining us, if you are watching us here on this fine Friday morning, unless you're in Europe, in which case it is Friday afternoon. My name is Bryant Francis. I am the hidden voice in the corner, as always, a contributing editor at Gamasutra. I am joined, however, by four wonderful faces in the bottom left-hand corner, even though there's like five screens over there. One of those faces is Chris Graft. Chris, could you please introduce yourself?
I can, and I will. I'm Chris Graft. I'm editor-in-chief of Gamasutra.
Sweet. And then the other three faces are the people who made this little game here you may have heard of called Yooka-Laylee. Or I should say they made it with some other wonderful people. You know the drill. Gavin, Chris, and Andy, could you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hello, I'm Gavin. I'm the studio director and creative director at Playtonic.
Hi, I'm Chris Sutherland. I'm the project director at Playtonic Games.
And the voices.
And some voices and, other bits and pieces.
Yeah. All right.
And, yeah. Oh.
The game is, just in case you aren't familiar, although it seems like everyone here probably is, the game is Yooka-Laylee. It was sort of pitched by, it was a Kickstarter game that saw success on Kickstarter, pitched as a spiritual sequel to the Banjo-Kazooie series on the N64, and sort of meant to, and feel free to like jump in and say that's not quite right, but sort of meant to capture that appeal of the rare 3D platformers of ye olden days. Could you all sort of talk about how you all got started working on this game and why you decided to go to Kickstarter for it?
Originally there was just 6 or 7 members at Playtonic, and we're all old men. We're all looking bedraggled and thinking, right, we want to get back to making games like we used to and work how we used to and work on those types of games again. So initially we just thought, well, we'll keep our aspirations small and we'll just start out and we'll announce ourselves and then we'll just get cracking on making our game. But then when we saw the big reaction to us, it was awesome when we just kept listening to what people were saying, and there was lots of people who kept mentioning Kickstarter. So we thought, but we'll give it a go, and we'll see how it goes. And then it's just like ballooned from there, and we've just been rolling really fast down a big dev hill ever since.
Yeah, the reception of this, just before the call, I had to do a little bit of, refresh my memory of how much this actually made on Kickstarter. And it completely blew the doors off, right?
Yeah, it escalated really quickly, to quote many GIFs on the internet. It did. It took us by surprise. We were able to luckily scale the team up with some other good talent pretty quickly off the back of that, and then try and meet everyone's expectations. We didn't realize there was that many people quite like us or as old as us thinking, hey, we want to play this kind of stuff again.
And I think we had a large number of backers compared to a lot of other Kickstarters out there. And in fact, a lot of our backers, from some of the stats we'd seen, were first-time backers, so they'd probably not backed any Kickstarter before. So I think that was quite cool in the way that we're able to draw people into Kickstarter for the first time that way.
Yeah. So the discrepancy between your goal and which was like 175 pounds or something like that. Or 200 or something around there, and then I don't know. And then it ends up making 2 million.
It was a tiny goal to begin with. It wasn't really reflective of the entire budget, in the fact that we also knew there was other sources of income to go to, like with regional development growth funds that the government support. It was just enough that we thought, this is enough to make us a viable business and a small little 3D platformer. And then when we ended up with that amount, it was like, wow, that changed everything for us. The game, the team size, the scope of the game, features such as co-op and multiplayer games. It gives a chance to kind of create a wish list and aligned with what the fans were asking for, and then go for it. So unbelievable at the time.
Yeah. So that discrepancy to me, between the goal and what was actually made, it reflects that you really underestimated the appeal that these kinds of games still have, right?
Yeah, we're very good at underestimating a lot of things.
Yeah, like what is it, like over deliver, underestimate, but over deliver.
I think it's difficult because there's people out there who would tweet things, and Grant Kirkhope was a great, he was pushing the idea for many years, but there's people there who tweet about it and people would email about it, but you'd never really know what does that actually count as in terms of numbers of people who would buy or kickstart this thing. So you don't really know how that translates, how many a bunch of tweets translates to in terms of Kickstarter until you actually go ahead and launch it.
But you've obviously collected all the metrics on those tweets and then figured out how many pounds every tweet about a game is, right?
I wish,
because that's how it works. It's not a total crapshoot or anything. Yeah. So you're talking about adding features, expanding the team, and things like that. How did all of that end up coming together? Because you could really mess things up with feature creep or adding too much overhead. So Gavin, as somebody who's running the studio, as well as you're the creative director as well. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, it was a first-time thing for me to have to do in terms of like be responsible and look after the livelihoods of other people, and it's not a pressure. I really cherished having, which was it was good. It instilled this massive fear factor in me to get it right and make sure I did it right. So I spoke to a lot of other people, got a lot of support from other devs, and people who had insights into doing this, and I just made sure I was constantly trying to validate every decision I made all the time. We were in a really lucky position as well. We knew quite a lot of other people from our past work experience who were saying, hey, I'd love to be involved and get this done. So that made scaling up a bit less risky in terms of finding people who would be a good fit for us personality wise, but also we were working on a game which I guess we knew a lot of the fundamentals. We already knew we don't have to re-figure out how to do stuff all over again. So no, it gave us a good foundation, and I guess fear and constantly changing underwear also made sure from the business perspective I was doing everything I could to make sure we weren't going to end up as a terrible news story.
That's what we're going to use as our extract on Gamasutra from this. As a studio lead, keep fresh underwear handy.
Yeah, definitely.
So when
case of emergency, break glass.
I have a floor down here. It's just full of underwear.
That's amazing. So when you're talking to other people, when and this can be a question for like anyone on here. If you're talking to other developers and this thing is blowing up and you're asking for advice because for yourselves personally you're heading into uncharted territory a bit. Like Gavin, when you're talking to and you're trying to get advice from your colleagues, what are you asking, like, and what are they telling you? Like, what were some of the best pieces of advice they gave you when talking about running a studio that's ramping up so quickly?
Just in terms of like understanding your churn rate in terms of money, and people are really happy to actually share their tools, so regardless of the numbers. And I never wanted to be cheeky and just say, oh right, so how much does this cost you and this cost you and this cost you, and how much do you make back for that? It was more just a case of, hey, if you could help me gauge how to calculate all this stuff, and people were giving me template spreadsheets, etc. I could just put in our figures at one end and see how the dates and the numbers were going down towards a scheduled release, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, this is okay, we can do this, we can have this. And every now and again someone might turn up and say, hey, can we have jetpacks and butlers yet? And I'd be like, no, we can't, it's not in the spreadsheet. No. So yeah, there's a real kind of friendly, let's help each other out spirit amongst indie developers, I guess, and that was really nice to see.
Chris, how was your experience with Playtonic compared to what? Did you go right from Rare to Playtonic?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, pretty much straight away. So. I mean, for me, it was a bit different because I spent the past 10 years actually being in production at Rare. So I was a producer role. So I had to kind of get my dust down my programming coat and put that back on. And then dive into Unity actually for the first time. So that was kind of quite interesting. me and fascinating to have to go back to the things I used to do and I used to enjoy, but and kind of obviously with a bit more pressure, I guess, because we were quite small in number at the start.
Yeah. So when you're switching to Unity, like actually, let me rewind a little bit, because Gavin had mentioned something about starting Playtonic and going back to the way that you used to make games. So something to that effect. Did it feel like you were returning a little bit to like the earlier parts in your career when you were more hands-on, or what exactly?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, although there's a technical, I had to go up a slight technical hill in order to get back to where I was 10 years previous. A lot of the way we worked is very similar. In back to when I kind of started at Rare, really, is we used to work with a small team, and we used to work quite collaboratively with, so I worked with Steve Mills, who's the character artist who created Yooka-Laylee and also Banjo and Kazooie, and so I work with him very closely, and he'll come up with an animation, I'll try something out, and then we'll kind of say that doesn't work, that does work, and then we'll just iterate on that repeatedly until we get something that feels right.
Okay.
So in that sense, the difference, I suppose, from what I might have been doing previously is that, if you've got a large team with 100 people, you can't really just say, try some stuff out and then get back to me, and I'm sure it will all work out. You kind of have to have a plan, because you can't just have them all running a riot. You need to have a plan and understand what they can do in the next however many weeks, because there's certain people who will be starved of or blocked on other people. Whereas if you've got a small team, you can kind of all muddle in and get things done.
Yeah. We have Andy Robinson on the call too. Hello.
Hello.
It's been kind of quiet. So how's everything going, Andy?
Yeah, good. It's the right day of the week, isn't it? It's Friday.
Yeah, it is. Can you kind of talk about what it's like, being a writer on this game? Exactly, what that means for a platformer game like this.
Well, as you can imagine, it's a lot of fun. I mean, like most things on the project, it's very collaborative. Everyone has a kind of shared personality, and love of stupid dad jokes and puns, and I wouldn't take a huge amount of the credit for the writing, because it's a group effort, and it's really a reflection of the personality of the team, that everyone kind of comes up with jokes, and you might be out one night having a curry or something, and you come up with a funny joke, hey, we should put that in the game, and it ends up in the game. So yeah, it really is kind of a reflection of the team and the personalities bouncing about, and I think that's been a big focus of everything that we do, of trying to layer personality all around the place.
Yeah. How exactly do you layer personality all over the place? Like what is like what is like the process of like taking those jokes from like going out at night to putting them in the game?
You mean literally putting them in? Well, it's I mean, obviously the designers will have a challenge in the game. We'll usually have characters as well, and then it's just about from my point of view, coming up with something absolutely absurd and humorous, something that kind of fits the tone of the game, something that we think players are going to find funny, to keep it kind of interesting and fun at all levels. It's not particularly, again, I shouldn't take a lot of the credit, because it's not particularly difficult to make kind of challenges in this type of game fun and humorous, when you're working with amazing characters and amazing audio. When you've got kind of one of those little talking heads next to your text chirping away, you've already 50% of the way there.
Yeah. Okay. So Andy, he's not taking any responsibility or taking any credit for anything. Now,
he's just got himself fired.
What exactly do you do then, Andy? Yeah. So Bryant, how's it going over here? What are you up to?
I'm playing a racing mini game. You remember those? Yeah. Oh boy.
I do.
I'm not very good at the racing mini game, is the only problem. I'm not good at video games.
Pretty hardcore racing video game, this though. This is like really difficult. We've seen a lot of fan feedback on this. Like, really, there's been a lot of people struggling with it. So you're not alone right now.
Yeah, it's fine. I think there's some questions in the chat that I would love to get to, but no, reverse controls. What? What? I have questions. I think I dying cleared it. There have been a lot of great questions in the chat. First off, you guys are working on a Switch version of the game, right? Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is that coming along, and how did that, like, obviously we're all very interested in how developers are working on the Nintendo Switch, so how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, we know this type of game, and with our heritage, there's always going to be a big ask to be there on Nintendo consoles. And the move to Switch was, it was kind of, our hand was forced a bit. We were technically limited a bit by the Wii, but Switch, it's going great. It's going fantastic. We're really pleased with how it looks in docked and undocked modes. Can't wait to share real, proper firm details on it in future. We're kind of not allowed to say anything. Stefano will jump on the call any minute. He'll just cut the electricity supply to our office. He's got that power. He has that power. I can't wait to share more of it. It means a lot to us as well with our heritage, and we're big Nintendo fans at heart as well. So can't wait to show more.
Without trying to make you talk about anything you're not supposed to talk about, because I really don't want Stefano to cut off your coffee maker. What do you guys think personally, your own personal opinions that I'm sure in no way influenced by working with Nintendo, about bringing experiences that were previously only on console to this kind of handheld format?
So I even the Wii I loved my Wii, and it saved my, many arguments in my household that if I was playing a game on the TV and my wife came in and she wanted to watch something, all I had to do was just switch the TV channel over and I could carry on playing on the gamepad.
And this would be the Wii U, right?
Yeah, and that was the Wii U. And I thought Nintendo didn't play up enough to that as a feature. That it changes not necessarily the games themselves so much if you're not using the dual screens, but it really changes the in-room dynamic. It's really useful, and the Switch is even better at that. So it's the best console, I think, that suits a lifestyle for a gentleman of my age who's getting on in life and wants to not have arguments with his wife or spouse all the time.
Yeah, take
that quote, Nintendo.
Take that. It's interesting. I talked to, his name is escaping me right now, but he is the indie, like the Nindies guy at Nintendo. And I don't own a Wii U, and I never had one. But he said, talking to people and doing their market research, he found that the off-TV play, like, that's how people were using the Wii U. And of course, obviously, that highly influenced the way that, the Switch's format. But that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like it changes something beyond what games are possible on it, in terms of the fact that you can have this. I'm not a time-rich guy. I've had an 18-month-old to deal with now as well. So I've had a kid, wife, you're getting on in life, you've got a full-time job. It's not like when you were younger and you had no real responsibilities. So finding time to play games becomes more difficult as you get older. But then there's something like the Switch comes along, and it's great. You can sit in the room, enjoy your gaming, and not be forced to watch the same rubbish.
Yeah.
I hope my wife's not in this Twitch stream. The same rubbish that she's watching.
She's dialing up right now.
I'm sure her tribute tastes are wonderful. I'm sure it's just the kid shows that you're frustrated over. Really quick, Master Time Lord is raising a question that I think we can sort of ask to talk about responding to player feedback. Master Time Lord is asking if there are any plans to tweak the controls at all, which I guess sort of invites the question. You guys come from, now that you've had a massively kickstarted game. You are constant. Someone once described to me as Kickstarters, instead of getting rid of like one overseeing publisher, you now have like 200,000 publishers. How do you guys cope with feedback like that? Requests to tweak the feel of the controls or the camera or something, and realize that there is no publisher standing between you and the player base this time. It's sort of, you have to decide how to respond to that feedback on your own. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I guess Andy should follow up straight for me, but it's social media these days just makes everyone so much more accessible to each other. That's helped a lot. So Andy can talk more. We know we've got something going out very soon. He's already written a post with some updates to tell people what's coming. But you're right, all of a sudden you've got a lot of voices from a lot of different angles telling you and agreeing on improvements that you can make to your game, and we've got to embrace that these days. I guess that's the days we live in now.
We should have a post going up, maybe as soon as after this stream's over, kind of detailing some of the stuff that we've been up to. The team are kind of working on, spit and polish and fixing kind of a few issues that are left, and also kind of improving the game as well in a few different areas. Maybe Chris can talk a bit about the controls. I don't know if we're doing anything there.
I think what we've generally done is we've looked at the feedback that's been out there. We've looked at what things that we've thought we could improve, and we've kind of munged all that together. We've kind of gone through it as a big list, and when we've kind of prioritized those things, and still doing so. And so we're kind of working through a bunch of potential changes right now. So, and we've been doing so since launch, really. So
that's the most non-specific I've ever heard Chris speak.
You like that? You like that answer? Basically,
no, I don't. Let's go specific. There's changes coming.
Yeah, but no, that's as much as I was going to go.
Yeah. So this is just interesting because we were just talking about like Platonic. This is the way that we we used to make games, and now the game is launched. And hey, you just launched a platformer game that's like a live service, basically. How's it been making that adjustment? Like the ownership that the players feel. It hasn't ended when the game launched.
Yeah, it's opened our eyes massively, and we've got loads of ways to improve on this as well. And from a technical perspective, it's quite interesting. There's a few things that link together with all this, such as so we've never been a multi-platform developer before, and with regards to the controls, we've actually got it's not until now we've realized, when we've had all this feedback to respond to, we've realized that actually we should be bearing in mind that the physicality of each platform's individual default controller needs catering to. So in Unity, which the game we developed in, we kind of have the same kind of under the hood mappings driving each controller, and we're thinking actually now we know, having never been through this process before, and we don't want to repeat the mistake going forwards. We know we need to cater a bit more to specific hardware in that regard. And it's a learning curve for us. Before, it was always a closed loop, and the game went out, and it was almost fire and forget, move on to the next thing. Now it's important, and I think we're desperate to show the game more love going forwards as well, because it's great, the response we had from those fans. They helped make us who we are and where we've got to so soon. So it's only right that we keep talking with them, and it's nice for us as well. Before, we were kind of kept in this dark dungeon in Twycross, not allowed any light. We were in that bubble, and now we've escaped, and we're dealing with all this sunlight and fan talk. It's actually quite refreshing, and I think it'll only set us up to be even better at what we do moving forwards, which is good.
Yeah.
Everyone in chat is asking really great questions. So Carter Freak says they are the current world record holder for Yooka-Laylee's any % category on PC. I assume this is a speedrunning thing. Speedrunning community would love help pointing out things we found with the game. One such thing is physics seem to be updated per frame instead of on a fixed update. Is that something fixable on a grand scale? He also wants to add the game is amazing, and this obviously may not be the highest priority, but I guess it kind of lends itself to the question: how do you guys how are you dealing with speedrunners? We've asked that about a lot of platforming devs who've come on here.
You know what? We've been watching tons of videos ourselves. We love watching the speedrunners go. And we've seen the chap in Mentions run as well, and we're amazed by how people are circumnavigating lots of stuff we've had set up where we think, we've got checks into the players definitely going to have to come through this way. Oh no, someone's found a way through. It's brilliant. Technically, I don't think there's too much on the cards right now for changing how we do physics updates. I'm just a designer. I don't even know what physics are. Chris will have to. For me, it was another subject in school I wasn't doing very well at.
Chris, jump in. What are physics?
So there's certainly there's things we are looking at for speedrunners, which we've had feedback on, and obviously for speedrunners it's kind of frustrating when there's, if there's a long cutscene and you've got to sit and wait till that's over. So there's definitely things there we're looking at.
Yeah, we've extended the cutscenes.
Yes, that's right.
we've made them longer.
You can no longer skip any dialogue.
We want to feel the love from the speedrunning community, so we've extended them. Yeah. Actually introduced a pause.
Chris, I'm wondering. Gavin is talking about multi-platform game development, and was that the biggest challenge here as the technical person, or what like really was difficult for you from a technical standpoint, aside from having to come back and learn all the newfangled Unity things?
I guess it gives you a different, when you're working with an engine that's already out there, you have a different set of challenges. And one of the reasons we went for an engine is because we wanted to be a gameplay focused company and not a tech building company. And also because if we built our own engine, we'd be there for it would take us another year or so. And because we just spend all our time building the engine initially. So one of the challenges is when you've got an engine is you then got to think, well, which systems do we write our own, or which systems do you start to bring in? Because with any engine nowadays, you can also there's a store where you can buy in or find assets that are available or systems that are available, and you can take a look at them and you might say, well, is it worth bringing those in to save ourselves time? We did that in a few cases, so we have to kind of look at those things, and then there's other challenges as well, such as going to detail here, but I suppose you've got things like when you're on different platforms, you've got the SDKs on that platform might need to match a certain SDK for your engine, and then you've got to juggle those. Then you've got the different versions of any packages that you buy on the store. Then you've got to have, they may only match with certain versions as well. So you have an interesting kind of juggling challenge when you actually want to release something, as you say, well, I must make sure these all line up, all these versions. So that's, I suppose that's a trade-off that you make if you want to work with an engine. But at the same time, I don't think we wouldn't be in the position we are now and have released a game if we'd have built our own engine. So for us, that was definitely the right decision.
Did you at one point consider, building your own tech, or
considered it for about this long?
Yeah. And was like, nope. Did you, when you were at Rare, did you do engine related stuff there?
I suppose, back when I was doing Donkey Kong Country, we wrote pretty much everything ourselves, or even back before then when I was doing our Battletoads arcade machine. I wrote everything there, so I'd kind of been used to writing everything, but I think over years I got used to the idea that actually that's not necessarily the best idea. It's certainly not the quickest idea, and sort of having other people do things or bringing things in off the shelf often saves you a lot of time. It's sometimes difficult because the temptation is to think, oh, I can go in and make this really much better, but you tend to forget, having been in production, you kind of forget the fact that that's going to take a long time, and you also forget that you've got to QA it, and then you've got to support it. So there's a kind of hidden cost that you don't often think about when people think, oh, I'll just write this system myself, and they don't think about the fact that they're going to have to spend the next however many years supporting that system and answering questions about it.
Yeah,
there's tons of pros and cons. That was one of the things when we spoke to other indies as well. We got a lot of advice on, and we had to gauge, and that would be my advice to someone else as well, is to speak to a lot of people and understand like what the risks and pros and cons of using your own tech versus someone else's all throughout. It can have like some very long-lasting effects on the development of the game. For us, I think it was the right call, and in future we've actually we've seen where they introduce elements of risk into our planning, what we can do in future to improve that. And so we've already got some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. I assume that you had to, when you're sitting down, considering to go like for like an engine, I think that Chris said, you could be like working on that tech for like a year before you start making the game proper. However, there are some studios, and they're getting like smaller in amount, but they are big advocates for like rolling your own engine. Is it like Chris as a tech guy? Is that just more of kind of like because you can do it, do you want to, or is it like some like technically focused people, what advantages would there be to, having your own engine?
Yeah, I guess it depends on if your game is focused around performance. So in other words, if your game has to support a vast number of things on screen, or it's just got to have an amazing amount of things going across the network, or there's things that you probably don't want to maybe bring an off-the-shelf engine that can do any number of things, you might want to have something that's very focused. So you might want to go down that route in that case. And if you want to build an engine that's got a whole variety of different effects to visual effects and support and so on, then you probably are going to take a long time. So if you're a small team, you probably, I guess it's more if you want to be focused on a particular area. So perhaps if you've got a very stylized look to your game, and you need that extra performance, then you might want to go down that route. So I can see why people would do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you could all talk about this, but Gavin, you had brought up rare heritage. What does that mean to all of you?
For us, I guess it's the way of working. We don't like anything to affect our decision making other than what we as the team want to go on into a game and how we get it done. And it's naturally, with the kind of people you get involved, if you follow that process, what comes out literally could only exist because of those people. It's your personalities, it's yourselves put into a game, and we always just thought that always created that nice, interesting, unique propositions in games, and you ended up having your take on genres and doing things a particular way. And Rare's got great heritage, and I think it will continue to have a great heritage for a long time to come. You're speaking of bespoke engines and what they're doing with Unreal, and how they've got a lovely tech game in development at the moment. So I guess the Rare heritage, it's more of when I talk about it, it's more from a personal kind of it's how the team and how the people bond and put themselves into a game, and it manifests itself. And it just happens to be it's the same mix of people kind of condensed and forming a large part of the company like it was back then, which has helped us bring that character back and a lot of those familiar traits in Yooka.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the past platformers that you worked on. Chris had brought up Donkey Kong Country. Can you just kind of give us a little bit of insight on like making those games of the past, and what just the platformer genre in general? What is this lasting appeal? That like, why do people still care?
Interesting. That's stumped. I'm going to pass that one to Gavin first.
No, he asked you. I can't. No, go for it. I think accessibility and variety are key parts of the genre, which always help it have long-lasting appeal. But specifically, come on, Chris, put you on the spot.
I think for us, I mean, in the games that we write, there's a lot of humor, and the humor's there. It's kind of I think like Gavin was saying earlier, it's a byproduct of the people that work on it, and it kind of oozes through in a way in many places, and you'll see that in kind of Easter eggs and things that are in Yooka and other games we've created. But there's a certain kind of thing that people, there's certain kind of humor. It's not like we're trying to write the game to cater for a certain age group or anything. We're just writing something and we're creating something we think is going to be fun and funny to play, and it's going to make you smile, maybe laugh out loud at certain points. So I think that's where the key is for me.
I think mechanically, what your fingers can do in a platformer, especially a side-on one like DKC, you can read a lot of screen information and marry that up with some individually. Every action's quite simple, but layer on all these elements, trying to make you pat your head and rub your belly and do all that kind of stuff together. it creates that challenge where everyone feels like, no, I will get past this. I will be able to do this sooner or later. So it's a very sticky, very engaging type of gameplay, and the depth can layer up and just get its teeth and hooks into you really early on. I think there's something going on there with platformers that you don't quite see in other genres, where the complexity has to come in through having real bigger complex systems, whereas platformers say, oh, actually everything by itself should be relatively easy to do. It's just that we're going to start throwing more of these closer together and at you in conjunction with each other, which I think makes it really nice and satisfying to beat.
Yeah. So when you're setting up the project and you're talking about Yooka-Laylee, what are some of the design guidelines, or some studios call them filters, that you're setting so that you make sure the project stays focused and on track?
I'll start Chris talking off on this one just by saying, first of all, it comes down to us for character controller, and we kind of use that as our unit, as a metric for what everything else gets built out from. So he works closely with Steve Mills, like you mentioned earlier, and we figure out jump heights, distances, and then we talk about everything in terms of those units. And we've always said we like our games to be mechanically fun and engaging, so the characters just being controlled in a test background alone feels fun. And we tried it out on our kids, and they all just, even though they can't do many of the objectives or the tougher challenges in the game, they enjoy just moving the characters around. So we nail that early on, and then kind of build out the worlds and puzzles, objectives, all from that, really.
Yeah, and from the character control, we built that initially because we're an indie studio, we're starting from scratch. We had no models, so we started with a cube and made that jump and kind of tried to define some initial heights from that, and then from there we then iterate and build in the character. I think we stuck a texture on the cube initially of what we thought the character was going to be, which we thought was a tiger, so it wasn't. And then we had this tiger cube jumping around, and then we switched it to kind of early version of Yooka-Laylee. And then from there, you start to kind of get a sense of, okay, this is what the animation is like. And usually it's a case of keeping the jump height the same, and then you build the animation around it. But sometimes, depending on the moves or some of the crazy things that Steve will come up with, or ideas, and the way the characters can kind of work together to do a move, you might make some modifications to that.
When you're white boxing and you're prototyping, was there a certain point in that early part of development where it's like, okay, these cubes, we've got something with this? Like, was there like a point where it just kind of clicked and it's like, okay, like this is, at what point in development did it feel like it all starting together into a cohesive game?
I remember early on, like in the white box level, Chris didn't ask an artist to put stuff down. He kind of just put stuff down randomly himself. And as you're playing, I remember just trying to do things like, oh, can I jump and land and ace that bit? A bit like parkour, but with a character. And when you start realizing you're creating your own fun in this game, and all you're looking at is the most ugliest scene you've ever seen in your life, and but you can't stop putting the pad down, you kind of feel like, yeah, we're getting there with this. This should be great when we start fleshing out even more. I love doing that. I love any video game I can get my hands on. One of the first things I do is just start testing the boundaries of what's possible with the player controller, and am I having just simple fun and creating my own mini stories as I'm playing along. And when I'm doing that, I look to do that in development as well, as early as possible, and it helps make hopefully better decisions.
The what Chris was saying about designing all of the character movement first is interesting. Is that how it was approached with games when you were all at Rare? Just start with the character and the movements there and the mechanics and like the metrics of that character, and then build up around it?
Yeah, I mean, it was again, it's all these things are usually an iteration. That's the word I keep using. Right. But it's basically you start with a first version of something, and then you try that out, and then you say, well, how's that going to look like? And then you go, well, okay, well, I'm a bit too close in there. Let's move that out. See, maybe it should be further out. Let's see, what's that view look like? What's that height look like? Does it feel too big? Is everything moving too fast? And then you move in and you kind of try another version, and then eventually you start to kind of go, oh, this is kind of cool. And I think like Gavin said, you'd end up kind of playing around on a level that's pretty much a blank level with a few boxes dotted around, and it feels really kind of like fun, and you find yourself absorbed with that for several minutes, and then you go, oh, actually, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I apologize. I need to ask a question. Where is the next hub? Where's the next book?
You're not the first to ask.
Have you got a player's guide there?
No.
So head to your
us.
left.
That's us.
Head to that furnace. Head to the furnace to your right.
Do you have the body slam move?
Behind you.
Yeah, I do. Behind me.
Yeah. There's to your left a little.
Oh, it's up. It's up
on-
this place.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have
Yeah.
the body slam. Yeah. Thanks.
That would
Sorry.
have been great if one of you just sent him a link to game FAQs.
I wonder if Andy will be mentioning how we're improving signposting in the hub in his update later on.
Andy,
Maybe.
Well, if I look to the screen to my right, I mean, I'm seeing something in action right now. So yeah, hopefully we won't have that asked so often in future. Hopefully, you're not the first, basically. I'm trying to give you an easy out here, Brian.
It's
everyone's
not you, Bryant.
Look, it's okay.
Yeah.
This has not been the first time this week that a developer made fun of me for being bad at their game.
We do have a few questions from chat. We'll go to this one. Daniel Garza asking how many people were working directly on environment game assets. How many people are on the development team overall, also?
All right, let's have a look. There's 1 character animator, 3 character artists, 4 environment artists. There were 3 designers and I think 6 programmers and 1 audio guy. And then we had the 3 composers on contract as well.
Hope you're counting those.
Yeah, sorry I wasn't adding those. But if anyone had a calculator in chat.
Gavin, you worked out the average over the project was about 16 because we started with with 6 people, so I think it was about 15 or 16.
For 2 years, for 2 years it was an average of 15 people if you average out the man months, which isn't bad for the type of size of game we've done.
What's that guy behind you doing? Is he actually an employee or is he just kind of hanging out there?
We hired
earlier.
him. Yeah. Don't tell Andy. That's the new writer. No. So we've actually hired. This is a chap we've worked with before as well. He's Andy, our PM producer. He's going to help us basically be the best of both worlds. Modern game development in our old-fashioned ways, where we can't teach these old dogs new tricks.
So, Brian, I see that you were able to get out of your little predicament.
Yes. This is a cutscene where Capital B is reassuring the chairman of the board and the other board members that quarterly profits are being met. We had to lay off some employees. So, very exciting subjects for a video game.
I think originally he murdered the employees, but we had to change that.
He
Age
mentions
ratings.
he mentions having to some have been whatever. I didn't realize the joke was that dark at first.
Yeah. But he's happy with the positive upturn on the head count and the spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I don't know if Andy wrote this thinking that I'm capital B as the head of the studio, and I was worried about spreadsheets and turnovers and how to reduce head count.
This wasn't a jab at Microsoft, at whoever bought Rare way back when, was it?
No, not at all. We're not that clever. We're really not.
Yeah, I mean, you can put the Murderous Bee in the M-rated DLC for the game.
Maybe.
There's a button. It's like retro mode in Wonder Boy the other day. There's a button you push, and instead of switching the game between retro and new, it just switches between banjo mode and conquer mode.
Profanity.
I was thinking it's kind of interesting that we call I don't know if you refer to this game internally at Playtonic or when you were pitching it internally, it's like a retro game. I mean, what do you think of that designation of how is this a throwback?
In many ways, it is a retro game, I guess, but it's hard to think of it as such because it's 3D. But the N64 turned 20 last year, I think, and you realise, PlayStation era, when games started going 3D, they are kind of retro now. It's just harder to make that distinguishment between this and something that looks really retro, perhaps like Shovel Knight, and give it the same moniker. So, there were elements of it where we thought, we're deliberately being retro, and there were some areas where we're trying to be a bit more modern as well, and trying to get the best of both worlds. I don't know how successful we were at that in some areas, but it gives us plenty of food for thought moving forwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked to a lot of developers and who have remade a game. Like Wonder Boy, for example. We were just talking about that. But there are a lot of people who are trying to, even with the new Doom, a lot of developers trying to draw from the past. But how do you do that? Take your inspiration and the nostalgia from the past. And update it for like a modern audience. Do you feel like Yooka-Laylee is basically a game from the 90s?
We tried to soften it in a lot of ways. I think gamers these days coming in at a younger age won't put up with so much difficulty. And I know when I was a kid, I didn't care how difficult a game was. If it was good and engaging, I'd keep playing it over and over. And it's great to see games like Dark Souls like really grab an audience as well that still cherishes that kind of that challenge. But we tried to take the edge off a lot of a game in certain places. We wanted some bits to be deliberately difficult and challenging for completionists, also so we can watch streamers swear and get their screen some more. And there's a lot of things like people perhaps don't want to play a video game where it's ultimately guess what the designer wants me to do next. We try to encourage a bit more free routes and replayability to the title, going through the game, taking a different route to other people, activating different things at different times. We had a perk system as well with the tonics, so which means players could kind of adapt the game to suit a different play style, because gaming's so much bigger than it was 20 years ago in terms of audience. It's kind of important to accept that there's lots of different kind of like gaming characteristics or personalities to cater for.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it was about kind of doubling down on the uniqueness of those types of games as well. I mean, when we sat down and thought about what made those games unique in today's kind of landscape, it's the platformers you see today are kind of very linear type games. That's what they kind of evolved into, the A to B, or they're kind of more action orientated. So the type of game that we made was very open and, empowered players to kind of explore on their own and have that kind of feeling of satisfaction when they discover things. And that's why we tried to kind of bolster that with stuff like, being able to purchase moves in any order and being able to expand the worlds is the big one, which, I think was a really great idea, that players can kind of choose if they want to play for the game in a linear fashion or if they want to make, certain worlds even bigger and kind of go and find and collect everything.
Yeah. So a few more questions from chat here. Velderon's asking what kind of updates can we expect in the future from Yooka-Laylee? We kind of touched on that earlier, I think, a bit.
I think it's stuff like... Sorry, go on, Gavin.
No, I was going to say just stick around for Andy's update on the website later on today. But it's basically a big chunk of us having read through lots of forums, social media posts and feedback on the game all up. We want to make sure we're always doing stuff which isn't just us as devs kind of hiding, saying, "Oh, I'm really nitpicky about this thing. I want to change just that."
Yeah.
I don't know if we can talk too many specifics. But
sure.
there's
the blog post is coming.
Yeah. But
I think the one thing we can say is that
go on.
Sorry, the one thing we can say is that when we did the ranking, actually, it was all based on what we believed, what community said. It wasn't based on us going, "Oh, I think we should have green. This thing should be green rather than red." It was all based on what the community was saying and the kind of the voice that was coming out, the things that people are saying online, on videos, on YouTube, on forums, and so that was what we prioritized items. But we're not giving specifics right now because we're working on those. And the way things work is if we say it's definitely going to have this, then it might not exactly have that by the time we want to release things. So we might change things around depending on how things go.
Something we've noticed as well is we've certainly got a few elements in the game which are completely divisive. There's person A who loves something the way it is, and person B who hates something the way it is as well. So where we are making certain changes, we're going to empower people to decide, right, which ones are they turning on and off. Things to do with the camera controls, speech, all sorts of different things. Yeah, we're not going to completely nerf something to then cater for someone else and then just have equally just as many people annoyed because we've changed something they loved. We're making sure anything we do change is down to the player to decide whether they want it or not.
Yeah, it's challenge. I mean, it sounds challenging running a platformer, a game of the platformer genre as a live service. I assume that you kind of expect, like with some of these more major updates, to maybe get a boost in sales, or how do you handle that from a marketing standpoint?
We've not really thought of it as in terms of too much of as a business or marketing thing. It's definitely more us as we feel it's the right thing to do. It'll only help us improve and make better decisions earlier on in whatever we do next as well. So it's a good exercise for us to be doing. If there's an upside to sales as well, that'd be great. I mean, we've seen on Steam we've got a really high positive score, which is great, and I guess it's nice to try and drive things like that up as high as possible. And if they manifest themselves in more sales, that's great. If not, we're still plenty of positives to take out of us doing it.
You heard right here. Every update for Yooka-Laylee has the purest of intentions. There's also. I just want to run through a couple of these. All right. I'll address this one, even though we addressed it earlier. But to repeat from Quartz USS Possible 123, asking Nintendo Switch version. Is there a Nintendo Switch version? And now the person's spelling out Switch with a letter per line. So the Switch version is in process.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people really want some firm details about it all. We're just waiting until we've actually got the best information we can give them, so we then don't look like idiots later on. We want to give them the best info we can and be committal about it. So apologies, it might be taking a bit longer than they'd like and then we'd like to get it out there, but we just want to do it right and proper. So ultimately, when the time comes, everyone's really happy.
Yeah.
Sorry, the way this game just turned, the mode change just was funny.
Yeah. So Bryant, let us catch us up a little bit on what's going on here.
Well, they insulted my pub quiz team, so I'm gonna be my friends are gonna be a little disappointed about that, and I'm now in a shooting gallery of a game. So it's a Friday. These things happen. I gotta say, so my observation playing this game and having only fuzzy memories about how Banjo-Kazooie worked, because as much as I played the game in a lot of friends' houses, I'll put it that way. How does it feel? I mean, I kind of noticed that even outside of the mini games like this one, it feels like there's just a lot of places where this feels like mini games within one. Like, it's different than other puzzle games I've played lately in that, like, a lot of other puzzle games have had sort of feed off each other and build off each other. Zelda puzzles, then Breath of the Wild, which we bring up once every stream, it seems. They have this, they all root from your abilities. But you guys have sort of built all these little different ways of playing inside your game. How was that design process? And was it similar at all to how how you've always sort of done the platform stuff, or was it very new?
It was madness looking back at it
to
try and attempt this level of variety and features, but it's kind of stuff that we saw people kind of expected from us in a way. So it's kind of like matching people's expectations with what we thought we could do. So for example, having arcade games which would then double up as multiplayer experiences. When you got 4 people, you can come back and play this with other guys, and having that kind of light-hearted party in-game, all around one screen stuff going on. As we went along, we were just kind of listening to what other people wanted. We always valued that our past games, they seem to have a lot of high variety in, and games don't seem to do that these days. The bigger, riskier AAA productions seem to just double down on a fewer, smaller core set of features. So we thought it'll help us stand out as well if we can try and offer as much different types of fun as possible.
There's Daniel in chat asking, how was the creative process to define the book world's theme? Where were there more themes you discarded in the process?
I think there were, yeah. So the book worlds, it's a very important theme, not just for this game, but for the entire Platonic universe. So one thing Andy doesn't credit himself with enough is not only are we trying to create I mean this in an affectionate way, a stupid story for Yooka and Laylee to be going on this adventure, but also like we're trying to lay some roots for this larger meta-narrative that'll take place over a ton of different games we do in different genres. So characters coming back, why these books here, why the Yooka and Laylee are going after the one book in this game, and there's going to be other elements that are important, that ultimately the villains, there's a coalition of villains that are all after these different elements that can then help them control the universe and rewrite whatever they want. So yeah, the book themes are really important plot device for us doing that, and will help us go into different genres and different types of worlds, even different types of tone of game if we want to in future. We wanted to be able to create something early on which gave us reason that if we wanted to do something in first person shooter territory, in top down strategy territory, there'll be ways we could do that.
Yeah. Well, we're about to the point where we need to part ways. So, Bryant, any other parting thoughts as the person driving this game today? You're whipping things around with your tail earlier. What looks satisfying.
Looks satisfying.
Yeah.
I appreciate, as I said before, the fact that each of these worlds, it doesn't feel quite like a lot of other games I'm playing where you go into an area and there's sort of just your goal is to reach the end of the area, and you're presented with some very nice encounters along the way that are clever and inspiring. I'll just throw out Titanfall 2 as a game. But rather you are jumping in and not given so much freedom as to even think about calling it an open world or a sub-open world or something, but rather there's just these little positive puzzles that sort of like even the little successes make you move forward a bit, and that's what I'm struck by right now is the way each individual world is spatially arranged and the way the puzzles are sort of disconnected but connected in a weird way. I'm not doing it. It just turned 9 a.m. here, so I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm having a hard time vocalizing this, but that's what
I think I know what you're saying, because like on the earlier titles, like everything was so precious a resource in terms of polygons you could push on screen, etc. You could only spend triangles and on stuff that was essential to the gameplay. But now modern gamers, they kind of want fleshed out living worlds that feel alive and lived in and have got stories to tell, but matching that up with gameplay that can then fit into those areas of the world and still feel like they fit without looking contrived as well. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, we've got artists that go mad with polygon power every single time, straight out from the bat. They're putting way too much on screen. So it's a difficult fine line to balance in terms of like world creation, in terms of what's important, when can we spend, when do we have to focus what we're doing on a key bit of gameplay, and when are we just having some nice embellishment and touches and trying to create a nice beautiful game to look at as well and enjoy just scenic views and vistas here and there.
Yeah. Before we go, I'll allow the audience to get one last question in. The question is from Robbie Shenanigans. Were there any plans to make a bit more worlds after the final level to sort of make use of the moves that you've learned, like how it was in Banjo-Kazooie?
Yeah, a lot more moves. So there's stuff to do on every world with all the moves. So there's always a reason once you've been through the game and unlocked all the different moves to come back and visit earlier areas, like Andy mentioned earlier, expand the worlds, find new areas where you'll find a bit more challenge. I mean, this world as well as a cool expandable area that if you've played the game, people will know what I'm talking about. But it kind of adds a new perspective on things. So yeah, and you know, I think we wanted, so we have to kind of cater for two different players. There's the completionist who wants to do everything as they go along, and there's the person who wants to get through as fast as possible and then come back and mop things up. So hopefully we've catered to both as best we can.
Cool. Well, after this thing loads up and I can pause the game, yeah, I will begin the ceremonies of signing off. Thank you all for joining us. If you just came in recently, this has been the Gamasutra Twitch channel, chatting with the Gavin Price, Chris Sutherland, and Annie Robinson, who all worked on this game, Yooka-Laylee. If you enjoyed chatting with these developers, we invite you to follow our channel, because we are chatting with developers on a regular basis and want to be able to take your questions about game design and game development right to them. As for you guys themselves, do you want to tell them to follow you on Twitter anywhere? Is there any specific place you want them to go? The forums to complain?
Not to complain, to to hang out with you in an online environment.
Yes.
Chris Sutherland lives at 43. No, I guess Andy should do the info.
You can complain at Playtonic Games on Twitter.
All right.
And on Steam forums and on our own website forums and Facebook. And
Chris Sutherland's home address also.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's the
I'll
most
post
important.
directed there.
Well, on this strange bug I seem to have encountered,
Just
Round pound,
Jump.
Oh,
spam.
Kill the stream. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. End the stream on breaking your game.
Curse those mesh colliders.
That was a feature.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for joining in. And for those of you who are following us here in Gamasutra, we're actually going to be back in a couple hours to play the Prey demo. So keep an eye on this feed if you want to hang out then. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.